All right, so we're gonna continue our unit on solving quadratics. And in this mini unit, we will talk about how to solve quadratics using square roots by completing the square and using the quadratic formula. Okay, so that's our learning target today. All right, to get us going, let's go over a couple of things. What is the square root of 25? We'll pause here. Okay, well, the square root of 25 is really asking what numbers can I square and get 25, right? Well, 5, but there's actually another number, and that's -5. Because if I take -5 times -5, I get positive 25. So really, when I take the square root, there's actually always two answers. So we've always just been told to say the positive version. Well, really, when we say this, there's actually 5 and -5. So when I write my answer for this, I really often could write 5 or -5. Well, mathematicians often like to take some shortcuts, so they usually write plus or minus 5 to take care of both of those values. So that means just positive 5 and -5 are both your answers, but it's just kind of a quicker way to put them both in there. So if I were to look at this right here, x squared equals 49, how do I solve this? Well, to get x by itself, you got to get rid of that squaring, right? Opposite of squaring something is to square root. So we're going to square root both sides. Squaring and the square root cancel out, so I get x is equal to, and then the square root of 49 is 7, but remember there's always two answers for any positive number. So this is really 7 and -7, which we can just write as x equals plus or minus 7. Okay, so a little bit about square root. All right, so what we've been discussing is how do we solve quadratics. A reminder that solving quadratics, we're really looking for, again, that point or that point where they cross the x-axis, okay? So we are going to focus on these three in this mini unit for the rest of quarter 3, solving by square roots and completing the square and quadratic formula. Today's square roots. Okay, so when I look at a usual typical quadratic function, it's ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? Now, to solve a quadratic using square roots, there is something unique. You can only use this in specific cases, and you'll notice here it says only works for quadratics in the form of ax squared plus c equals 0. In other words, there's no bx term. So this term right here, you know, if I'm going to use square roots to solve a quadratic, it can't have this bx term in the middle. So that's a really important point. If it doesn't have that, you actually should use square roots. It's going to be fastest. So how do we do this? If that's the case and it's in this form here, then what you want to do is get the x squared by itself. So use your solving equations methods. And then once you get the x squared by itself, you have to get rid of that squaring. So you're going to take the square root of both sides. And then don't forget that when you take a square root, that positive number always has two square roots. Okay? All right, so how do we do this? Well, again, double check that it's in ax squared plus c equals 0 form, and then go from there. Okay, so it is. So now what I'm going to do is get the x squared by itself. So to do that, I'm going to add 100 to both sides. This would give me x squared comes down, these cancel out, bring my 0 down, or my equal sign down, and then 0 plus 100 is 100. Okay, so now at this point, I want to take the square root of both sides, okay? And so this is going to give me x equals, and then square root of 100, which you probably know is 10, which is plus or minus 10 though. Don't forget to write the plus or minus. I should have two answers for every time you do this. Otherwise, you're missing half your answers, right? So if you're not good with your square roots, you can always use your calculator. So pull that up. Okay, and then square root button. If you'll notice, here's the squared button right here, right? So I want the square root. You'll notice it's in blue right above that. It has a little square root symbol on this button here. So in order to get that, I have to press the second button, the blue second button. So I'm going to go second and then hit that, and then I would type in 100. And now your calculator will only show you the positive version. You need to remember that there's two answers there, okay? All right. So I have that. We're good. All right. So now, just solving these other ones, again, isolate whatever steps you have to do to isolate that x squared, do it, right? So this case, it would be subtract 7 from both sides of the equation. I get x squared equals 81. And now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. This would give me x equals plus or minus 9. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's making some sense. Here, I've got 6x squared equals 54. Remember, this means multiplication right in between here. So I'm going to do the opposite. I need to get that x squared by itself. So I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. That would give me x squared equals 9. And now take the square root, take the square root. And I would have plus or minus 3. Okay, so those are kind of just the basics to get you going. Let's take a look at a few other situations. Okay. So this one I got negative, subtract 25 from both sides. Get x squared equals negative 25. Okay, well I know what square root of 25 is, but what about negative 25? Okay, well let's type it in. Square root of negative 25. Okay, you'll notice here, if you take the square root of a negative number, you get an error message. So here, notice I have a negative underneath the radical, that square root symbol. I cannot have a square root of a negative number. And so in this case, we're going to write no solution, or you can do the no solution symbol there. That will happen occasionally. You might run across a situation like that. So just be aware of that. If you have a square root of a negative number, it's no solution. Okay, so something to just be aware of and kind of keep your eye on as you're doing your assignment. Okay, so this one, I want to get the x squared by itself. So just like if I were solving a regular equation, I would need to get rid of this 108 first. So we would have 3x squared equals 108. Okay, and now I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. So those cancel out. I get x squared equals, now I want to type that into my calculator, 108 divided by 3. I get 36. Okay, cool. And now take the square root. Okay, so x equals plus or minus 6. Okay, so that one I got a nice number. Just a couple more steps there that I had to do to get the x squared by itself. All right, I want to go through a couple other ones, 2 more, and then hopefully you feel comfortable with this. All right. So again, solve, get the x squared by itself. Always isolate the x squared. So I have negative 3x squared equals negative 30. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Okay, it was looking like maybe I'd have a negative number, but I don't, so we're okay. So now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And the square root of 10 is not a nice number. So let's see what we get here. So we're going to do square root of 10. I get 3.1622776. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal places. So we'll say 3.16. The next number is a 2, so it's going to stay 3.16. So remember, this is still both a positive and negative version. So we're going to say plus or minus 3.16. Okay. All right. Let's do one more, and then hopefully you feel comfortable with these then. All right, so this one, add 34 to both sides. I get 16x squared. These cancel. Equals 49. Okay, divide by 16. Okay, now if you type this into your calculator, you can, 49 divided by 16. You get that. You might notice, though, that both 49 and 16 are perfect squares, right? They both have a perfect square root. So if you just did this, now this is okay if you didn't notice this, but I just wanted to show you. And you just left it as 49/16 and now took the square root of both sides. Since 49, the square root of 49 is nice, and so is 16, you can actually just write this as plus or minus 7/4. If you don't notice that, that's okay too, and you just said, all right, I got this decimal, and now I take the square root of that decimal, 3.0625. You get plus or minus set 1.75. This is the same thing, right? So I don't care which way you write it, but just something to note if you are interested in fractions. That's another way to break those apart. Okay, that's really it with solving quadratics using square roots. Again, follow these steps. There's just a couple, and you should be good. Here is your assignment. Don't forget to write this into your planner and then check it off once you're done. I hope that makes sense. See ya.